live here with Jamie. Some of you may be coming over from the live that he was just over on with Mill Billy over on Mill Billy's channel with Mill Billy, Dr. Silkman, One Strand, Kelly was one of them, right?
Yep, Kelly and Calf.
And Calf, yeah. So some of you may have been over there and we're hanging out over there and saw that. So we're over here today, or now at this point, tonight, and we're going to be talking about Trial by Murder again. We're going to be talking about episode 3, which is called 41 Shots. It's a pretty tragic story, to be perfectly honest. In a lot of ways, tragic. And I don't know. I'm going to tell everybody right now, and this may be unpopular with some of you, but I do have some sympathy for the officers. Some. Not a lot, but some.
I've got 0 in this one.
Yeah, well, I have an overall questioning of their actions that I think is more important than what happened in the moment after they initiated it. So, but we're going to get to that, folks. Trust me, right after I take a drink of my whiskey here. So, give me a second. Ah, nice.
Just chug it.
I love that glass Paul got me. So, there you
go. Yeah, this one specifically, although the Subway Vigilante was one of my top favorites, this one is at least a close second. And my reasoning for it is that there was a few things when we look at MAM. There's a few things when you look at what the cops did and then what the government did as far as the trial goes that really they tie in pretty close to, how the powerful protect themselves.
Well, and I do have a bone to pick with the prosecution in this, and we'll get to that too. Hi, Sharon Sunshiny. How you doing? I do have, they see. I think what I do think this particular case points out is how the state is motivated to cover its own butt.
Yep.
By that I mean, people are going to say, "Oh, what do you mean, Erekose? The state of New York, prosecuted those 4 officers, right? They did their bid, right? No, when you hear that case that they offered described, it was basically going through the motions, doing the basic. It was a basic kind of case. They didn't actually put any, you can tell they didn't put any real serious or real effort into it because they weren't really trying to crucify those guys. Now that is troubling.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, yes, officers do have. You do worry about crucifixion of officers, like you're talking about, but what they did was, blatantly they actually basically told the community, "You're not smart enough to handle this case. Your community that you're supposed to be judged by a jury of your peers. No, let's go up to a different county where it's predominantly white." Right. And they already had a predetermined outcome and they knew exactly how they could get it to happen.
Yeah. It's disturbing that those kind of tactics get used. I mean, and it is, like I said, it doesn't really, to me, look good because it shows it just shows the state isn't fair-minded when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so what's the troubling aspect of that, folks, when I say that the state just doesn't care about things like that? Well, it means that the state doesn't care about corruption and that it may exist. Let's just say may exist, right? It means they have no interest in anything to do with it. And that means it will continue to run rampant.
And neither did the media. the media was a huge, and again, this is trial by media. When you look at everything that they put in about this guy, he was a, what did they call him? A peddler.
A vendor, yeah.
A peddler.
No, well,
you know,
vendor.
Well, but they called him a peddler, which,
Well, they may have called him that too. A peddler is still like a salesman. So
yes,
vendor, peddler could be the same.
Absolutely. But there's certain words that you can use that can lessen the impact of what they're trying to portray.
Sure. When you peddler, you think of somebody coming knocking on your door usually with the word peddler, and that would be that's an annoying image for people. So I could see that. Yeah.
Or somebody selling junk. Britannica encyclopedias or junk watches. And they intentionally put that that perception into people's heads. When they use the peddler, they could have said a street vendor would have been a better way to put it, in my opinion. I mean, because people then can now relate that in New York because they have those types of businesses run all over New York. You guys probably see them in your neck of the woods. We don't really hear because people freeze their ass off in the wintertime, so it's only seasonal.
Right. Right. Okay, so let's get into what happened here, I guess. Let's start talking a little bit about what happened here. So I guess we should start with, I thought it was interesting that there was a guy who was the mayor and they had started a program and crime had started to decrease in New York. Stuff like that. And then Giuliani was able to win the election, and I guess, or whatever, and he became governor of New York. And, he was basically, I think, at that point, the crime was decreasing, but I don't think it was necessarily anything to do with him. But then he institutes this kind of, like goon squad that kind of masquerades as police officers. Running around in unmarked vehicles and doing all these kinds of things that are only going to generate mistrust and that sort of stuff with the public at large. So I think it was probably a pretty bad idea to begin with by Giuliani.
Well, basically what he did was he yes, he had this, and we see this, it's more so prominent today. And I think maybe this was the first model of this, having plainclothes officers policing the streets. He upped their police force. I can't remember what the exact number was, but he upped their police force and their patrols. Huge. I mean, he dumped a bunch of money into policing, and he thought that was the way, instead of actually gaining the people's trust and working on the true problems that were going on in New York.
He only understood hit it with a bigger hammer.
Yep.
That's the only kind of solution he understood. So I thought that was all very interesting. So he creates this goon squad, which is very much reminiscent to me of the Vikings in episode, I believe, episode 4, and I think part of 5 of the Innocence Files, with the young man from Linwood. And in the Linwood Sheriff's Department, this little, gang of officers called the Vikings, who were kind of a similar stripe as these guys in New York. Okay, so we set the stage for these guys, these officers in New York by telling you that story. So one night we have Amadou Diallo is basically on his stoop, you might call it, or vestibule, other people call it, or whatever. It's basically the little landing where his front door is, and I think there's probably landings that lead to other apartments or stairways that lead to other apartments. Anyways, so he was on this little landing where he lived, He actually lived in one of those. He actually lived at the place where he was, right? So he's there. I guess he's just gotten home. He's looking for his keys. He looks down the street and sees the car coming. And I guess he recognizes it, and he knows that he's probably about to get hassled. And so he starts fumbling, I guess, and looking for his keys or whatever frantically. They obviously decide to stop and mess with him, or shake him down or whatever it was that was in their heads. And so they stop. They, tell him, hey, hey, please stop, whatever. Well, he's got his hands in his pockets, either looking for his keys or his wallet. In the show, they said it was him looking for his wallet. I think in the end, he had his wallet in his hand, and I think that's why that ends up being what was what he was reaching for. But he was unarmed completely. He was an immigrant from Africa. He came here to go to computer school. And it's just tragic. And so what happens is, as he's reaching for this wallet, a couple of the officers are like, it's a gun. One of the officers fires, and suddenly 41 shots are fired at this poor kid who has nowhere to go because he hasn't gotten the door unlocked. And so he is literally just in the crossfire. I mean, it's not crossfire, but he's in the path. 41 bullets. And so I think it said ultimately he was hit something like 21 times. I mean,
so here's
what reminds me of Michael Funk.
I was actually going to say that to you. Yeah, it's almost a parallel. The only difference is the amount of shots, and this was not a couple of officers defending themselves. 40. So they had four. There was 4 officers there, and they don't talk about what they had for weapons, but they had 41 shots. This was an assassination. This was not somebody just in fear. You don't unload, whether they I don't know what they carried back then. I
think they said it was 9mm rounds, but
yeah. So 9mm rounds. They probably had maybe 7 to 9 rounds in their weapons. They unloaded their full clip magazine. Whoever, if people want to say it that way, it doesn't matter to me. But they unloaded their magazines into him. Yeah. And if you think about it, 20 some hit him. These officers needed more training anyways, because their accuracy was only 50%.
Yeah.
So to me, this was an assassination. I can understand if somebody thought they saw a gun, and if maybe 4 to 6 maybe would have hit him. I mean, that shows you, for one. I mean, yes, they may have been scared, but proper training of the officers. 41 shots was an assassination.
Right, it's just a ridiculous number, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is what I keep talking about, folks. It's like the system's going to always side with, let's not be too hard on the officers. Well, folks, we got to get something done, because that kind of attitude from the system changes nothing. And stupid crap like this continues to happen, i.e. Michael Funk. So, I mean, and others besides. I can think of another one where a kid got gunned in the hallway, sniveling, snot in his nose, probably loading his pants. And because he was so having a gun pointed at him and everything, it was also whatever, the kid could not control himself, and he moved his hands in a way he wasn't supposed to enough times that the officer just unloads this machine gun that if imagine if you unloaded a full clip into a person, they would probably look like a pile of hamburger. But anyway, we question the force used and why, you know.
And they never do get into, just the fact of him being, a black person going into an apartment building. What was their reason for harassing him? Or I shouldn't say harassing.
Exactly.
Why were they watching him?
Why did they come up to him, and why? Yeah, what was exactly? Why were they there engaging that situation in the first place? You know, what probable cause? You know, that's absolutely a huge question. How that wasn't a huge part of trial is to me, I don't know, pretty bizarre.
Well, there's a few bizarre things with this scenario here. One of the biggest things. Well, okay, there's three big things for me. Number one is the amount of shots. Number two was the fact that they changed venue because they thought these officers could not get a fair trial, in the Bronx area, where this crime happened. Crap, I forgot my third one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll think of it. What the third one for me was, and this is where Al Sharpton was 100% correct. The city government was right there, spot on, trying to do damage control when his mother comes to New York.
Right.
Because from what I gathered when you watch this, it sounds like his family was very prominent in West Africa.
Yeah.
And well liked. And I think our, New York had figured this out somehow. Like, holy crap, we just murdered somebody, and this is a very prominent family in West Africa. This is not going to look bad. And they tried to do damage control, put her up in the best hotel, and tried to take care of her. And Al Sharpton read right through it, and I think he knew it was coming. And I'm not the hugest fan of Sharpton,
Right.
but he's done some good things in the U.S. in his time, and he called this one. He had it perfectly, exactly what they were going to do, and I'm for this one. I'm actually glad, and we look at this. If you look at the series, there's what, two or three of these trial by fire are in New York.
Mm-hmm. Trial.
Or trial by media.
Media.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, those are my big three. Them trying, the government, their New York City government trying to basically direct the outcome by those two things: the mother and the and moving the trial up to Albany.
Right. But I remember the part you're talking about where Sharpton ends up talking to her, and she decides that she would rather, go along with Sharpton, and you see Sharpton giving the press the clip like, "Oh, we thank the state of New York for its offer, but the people are going to take care of, Mrs. Diala, and everything." It was, so yeah, and
It's a smart move.
It's the way it should have been, because the state was certainly going to just probably even bully her probably at some point. Go with
I don't think it was going to be bullying. I think it was going to be, I think there would have been more so a scenario of them just trying to charm her. Like, we didn't do anything wrong. Here's what your son was doing. Or, what the reasoning was. They were going to literally try and minimize what happened.
Yeah. Well, whatever it was gonna be minimizing it. So, and I mean, ultimately, I think if you look at the argument at trial, where the officers were like, "Yes, we thought we saw a gun, and we're sorry," and whatever, and all that, and all the emotion they showed, and all that sort of stuff, you still have the problem of, yes, but why were you there in the first place? And I don't know if Travis is here or going to be coming in or not, but basically he's told me before that the courts don't look at it that way. They basically like look at only 5 seconds prior to the action, which is the 41 shots, and like I guess 5 seconds after. Like that's it. That's the scope of action that they're willing to consider in court or something. I was just like, that's when we were talking about Michael Funk. So I mean, I was just and if you look at it in that little scope, then yeah, fine, that defense works. But if you open that up to why were they there in the first place? Why were they messing with this guy on his own doorstep?
So I do hope that Travis comes in, and one of the things that I'd like to ask in reference to that is, okay, they look at a 10-second scenario for police officers. When it's say a crime of somebody else, they don't say, well, we're going to look at even bring up Teresa's case. What if this was a 10-second murder? No, they look at a span of over how long in Teresa's case, and then all the things that transpired, and they try to play it out for so long. But because they're police officers, we're only looking at their action within a 10-second time period. So in 10 seconds, I'll put it this way. Cops come to my house unexpectedly. They've got the wrong house. I shoot a police officer because he breaks into my house. I had 5 to 10 seconds to respond. Am I on trial because I shot a police officer breaking into my house? I'm going to jail. But guess what? The police officers, they're not. This is our government protecting their own.
Yes, I agree. And that's part of the problem with it. It's why these things get analyzed in the way they do in the courts. It's all meant to favor the state. It's our justice system is becoming well, maybe not beginning, but is becoming something of a joke because it's all so rigged in the prosecution or the state's favor nowadays that it's really just witch hunts in a lot of ways. There's very few. I mean, there's seemingly very few ethical prosecutors out there.
What we're seeing now more than ever is you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Yeah. And they try the big talk in court. You're innocent until proven guilty. No, many times the prosecution brings a case that doesn't make sense and is not correct, and they're allowed to lie. Yeah, they're allowed to lie, but you're not allowed to lie to officers and to the court. That's perjury.
And usually when you try to bring proof that they lied, you're like you get some stupid bull like you're procedurally barred, or some BS like that. Yeah, it's stupid.
Well, it's corruption at its best, really.
Oh, it's so stupid. But,
we're now in a different world, and guess what? Thanks to COVID, we're going to see that world change as well. The court system. You can face your accuser, but you got to do it by Zoom or by Hangouts or StreamYard.
Right. Right.
We don't know what truly is coming these days, and it's going to make trials even more impersonable for those that are being put up there.
Yeah. So let's say hi to everybody real quick. Hey, Linda. Hey, Millbilly. Hey, Super Mario Maker 2 Glitch Hunters. Let's see. Who else do we got? Anybody else here that I missed?
Sharon was in.
Hey, Sharon. How you doing? I think I caught her early on. So, is that Dark Side of the Moon? Hey.
Oh, Lyra's. I didn't see Lyra.
Oh, Shaz. How you doing, Shaz? So,
I don't know. My tablet's not slow. Oh, there we go. For some reason, that's lagging. Must be somebody playing PC games or something.
Well, must be. The PC games use up some bandwidth. So does
especially out,
StreamYards.
especially out in the country.
Yeah, right. Not you don't have. It's not like you have fiber out there.
I do to the house, but the out at the pad, I don't know what they've got there, but supposedly it's all getting upgraded.
Uh,
My phone for the live is doing fine. It's just my tablet's lagging behind. It doesn't seem to want to reload the live chat. So, but I'll try to keep in touch with it here. And yeah, this case here, and I don't know. I mean, hey, everybody that's out there, have you guys had a chance to watch them all? Have you guys seen the 41 shots?
I know Jerome's watching them right now.
Is he?
He said today he was going to watch 4. So maybe we'll get Jerome on with us tomorrow.
This one here was extremely important. Some of the ones that they had, King Richard, that one to me, that one, man, that guy played the system, and so did his lawyers. And then when you look at the one lawyer that he had been busted for wire fraud or something like that. After they left town right after. And here's another thing.
Yeah.
His one defense attorney, not to jump over to another scenario, but his defense attorney literally bailed town as soon as this case was over. He took the money and ran.
Yeah. You talking about Jim Parkman?
Man, it's the one in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay, so that guy, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Jim didn't leave. Okay, so Shaz has seen all of them.
Yeah. Paul has, and Paul will probably be with us tomorrow. He said he'll join us tomorrow. So when we talk about 4, and who knows, we may even do another one to talk about 5. We'll see how that goes.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the King Richard one's interesting. I mean, that guy is bold. That dude is bold.
Well, he used the black church community to his advantage. That's very evident, especially when you watch through the last one, or to the last part of the show.
Yeah.
And then he even left, and then afterwards he gets busted for colluding with the governor or bribing. So just interesting. But yeah, Shaz actually brings up she doesn't understand how they can fire 41 shots. They must have had to reload their guns. That is something that I don't believe you don't see many 10-round semi-automatic pistols. They vary. 7 to 9 is typical. I don't know what they were carrying as their their standard issue weapon in New York back then. But yeah, that is interesting. 41 shots would have meant that somebody was, at least we think, possibly reloading.
Right.
That's why I think this was more an assassination than anything.
Yeah, well, it's tragic because this guy, I don't think he meant anybody any harm. It's these cops were just overzealous. They were cruising. They were looking for trouble. And they found it. And they created it. And who paid the price? Who paid the price? Certainly wasn't them.
No, but what it did do, it did bring an awareness about this this crew of cops that were in this and doing that kind of profiling, and they do talk about that as well. That there was this was kind of the beginning of the profiling the black community.
Yeah.
And it does look bad on them, and we've all said this before. We know not all cops are bad,
Right.
And I truly. So here's the one thing that I will agree with you on. I agree. They probably thought maybe they did see a weapon,
Right.
but that's still no reason for 41 shots. I mean, the case being that many shots, they only hit 21 times. They would have seen. I know he was not fighting. I mean, at the first 10 shots, the first probably 3 or 4, he was already falling to the ground. You know he was.
Oh, certainly.
So why all the rest of the shots? And that's something that I think really should be the question should be asked there. Granted, it's too late; they've already been acquitted of it. But
yeah, you get that one guy saying, and I was sitting there saying, "Please don't die," and I mean,
this would be one here as well where it'd be very interesting to hear how long it took them from the time that the shots were all fired for them to call for an ambulance. Did they perform CPR? I don't remember anybody saying anything about that.
Oh, he had so many. I remember them going through the list of everything he had wrong with him. I mean, he had perforated lungs. He had his, I think, at least one of his kidneys destroyed, a hole in his bladder, intestines, were hit and punctured in certain spots.
Oh yeah.
One of his aortas up in his shoulder, I think, or something like that, had been shot away. I mean, he was, yeah, he was in bad shape.
Yep. But at least if they, well,
the blood loss from the aorta being blown away would have been pretty quick.
Yep. But did any of them have any blood on their hands from at least attempting?
I didn't see that in the show, but that would be an interesting question to ask. Yeah.
It's stuff like this, and again, I mean, I am pro law enforcement as far as keeping them safe, but this is not one of those situations where it seemed like they had anything to fear.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is something where they came up boldly out of the blue and felt like they had the upper hand. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's just not right for me. I mean, ultimately, I need just cause for them to have been there initiating that scenario in the first place. And if they're just causes, we saw this guy on a stoop. Well, no, that's not just cause.
Nope.
You see him creeping out a window or trying to crawl in through one, we're talking now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But standing on a stoop, I need more. That's not just cause. Now, if you wanted to pull up there and watch him and see if he actually pulled out a key and went inside, okay, fair enough. And then if he stood there for 10 minutes and didn't seem to have a key and then you wanted to investigate further, fine. You know what I mean? There's sensible ways this could have been approached, but clearly these guys were full of bravado, full of, just.
Yeah. And there was reports from people in the neighborhood that had witnessed it, and they said they never warned him to put his hands up or freeze or anything like that. They said that they did, but they had multiple people.
Again, sounds like Michael Funk.
Yeah. Yep. And it'd be even more interesting to find out what these 4 officers, what their record was after this. Did they learn their lesson from what they did before?
It's disturbing, but ultimately, I mean, we need to start reining in these servants, these public servants who do these things like Giuliani did. I mean, We also need people to start taking an interest. We all have to start taking an interest in our local area, but we also need to start having a focus nationally. I tell you what, I'm really scared of the current climate out there. Between the people who are claiming that COVID-19 isn't real and that sort of stuff, and people who are arguing over whether or not President Trump is the savior or the devil. I mean, I folks, it's not helpful. I see a lot of fear out there, and it's not a helpful thing. So I hope a lot of the time I've spent kind of preaching about being objective and not not falling into the herd mentality, evaluating things for yourself. We all need to do that for ourselves, and it's a scary climate out there, folks. And I hope common sense is on its way, because right now, in a lot of ways, it's not. It's not present.
Well, one of the problems is that everybody, you got to think about everybody throughout the country and the world, and what they're seeing and what they're being fed by their media, and this is truly what's causing what's causing the divide.
Yeah, part of it is. I agree that it's. That's why I made my criticism of people arguing over whether or not he's a savior or the devil, because for me, if you're arguing either way, you're missing the point in what's going on. And so that's definitely why I said it that way. But I agree with you. It's and the media is, attacking and doing things that it's doing. And look, I'm not here to get political. I'm saying, folks, be objective. Don't make your decisions according to party lines. Use your own brains. Look at the situation. Look at it objectively, and do what's best for everybody. Because here's the thing that concerns me the most right now is this pool of people claiming that COVID-19 isn't real, or it's not as deadly as whatever as everybody says. No, it is. It is. And then I see people saying, "Oh, the hospitals are not overflowing." Well, if they're not overflowing, it's because we've been effectively slowing it, which is what we need to do, so that our medical community will have enough ability to give those certain patients who this is going to affect severely some intensive care, and potentially a lot of personal intensive care to help those people get through it. But if we're not careful, those beds all become full. The doctors aren't able to give really focused intensive care to certain patients if all the beds are full. So you understand the whole point behind this, folks, is for me, it's not political. It's about, we want our medical community to not be overwhelmed so that they can potentially save more lives and less will slip through the cracks. And for me, that's what it's about. But I see a lot of stuff out there getting talked about that I think draws away from the focus of doing what's important. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents. And
that may be the case, but if you look at some of the things that are going on, we're talking about things that the media does, and here's a part of the reason what's making people skeptical. And I'm going to give you Minnesota, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going political. We're just, this is kind of more so about media and what they're playing on. And there is some government influence here on it. But so think about this. So in Minnesota, I think we have 45,000 or 60,000 medical staff that are literally furloughed right now. Mm-hmm. And then the governor actually goes and he authorizes medical staff that are licensed in other states to work in the state of Minnesota. When you have 45,000 medical staff that are furloughed, what is the purpose of this? And this is where people get so confused, because we're getting all this information from big New York news or California news, and then we're getting Minnesota news and where I'm at in North Dakota, the region I'm at, and then you've got Facebook.
Yeah.
You got Facebook, which is a big player, and then now if they don't like something that you're disputing or saying, they're shutting you off. I mean, they're blocking posts because, and some of it they should, but some of it's just because it doesn't fit their thoughts.
Yeah.
So where do people where can people actually go to get honest information when there's so much of it out there? Some of is honest and some of it's dishonest information that we're getting from the media. I've started to watch people like Joe Rogan and Dan Bongino.
I like Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I mean,
but all I can say is I don't know the answer to those questions, but I think, folks, I think most of you, I can tell you this, you can tell most of the bogus crap. You can, if you have a little common sense. But I'm not sure who's got it figured out. But I think, folks, when you're really looking at it, you can tell most of the ones that are most of the BS that's bogus. I don't know, but I'm of a mind that I do want the economy open back up, and I want things to start to get back to life as usual. And I think the way to do that is through mask wearing. As long as we're taking steps to prevent ourselves from infecting others, or at least knocking down the probabilities of our ability to do that, I think everybody can get back to work. And yeah, people are still going to get sick, but a lot less than would have without masks. And that's kind of my thinking. And I think that's probably the best way to go. But I don't know. There's a lot of drama out there right now. But I keep preaching common sense.
Well, when you bring up that statement of common sense, when you look at it, many people do have certain street smarts and common sense, and that's where all this information they're trying to put all of it together into one, and that's where the problem arises, is that you're seeing, trying to make sense of so much information, whether it's good or bad. When you look at the numbers of what they get, the numbers of what are being reported, and the numbers of what these hospitals get for funding, $39,000 if you're put on a respirator, $13,000 if you're diagnosed with COVID, and this is where people's common sense is, that they're triggered by this as well, like $39,000 for a ventilator, and then you see,
as I've said, people need to be vigilant here, because this situation has a lot of fear involved. Oh, there's Travis. The situation has a lot of fear involved, and there's going to be powerful people out there trying to manipulate you. I'm not kidding. They're going to be out there trying to manipulate you all. Y'all need to be objective, and you need to be having your eyes open. Even I'm scared looking at how much fear I see out there. And to see the people this fearful is a really uncomfortable thing, and that's my main takeaway, I guess you might say, from the current state of affairs.
Well, sure. I mean, when you look at our community right now that we've got, that I'd say probably 95% of us came from the MAM community. That's what we're all relying on, as well as our common sense is what's telling us what's wrong with that case. And our common sense in this one, 41 shots. Our common sense is telling us that the guy was probably dropped after 3 or 4 shots. You didn't need to put the other 38, 39 into him, just as this. I mean, our common sense is actually playing a factor. It's just the information that we're getting. We're not getting everything all at once.
Yeah. Well, like I said, common sense also tells me, folks, that rural America, not really in so much danger from this. You know, with slight precautions, they would probably be fairly safe. But big cities, big cities, we all mix it up with each other quite a bit, and that's where it can spread the easiest. You know what I mean? And so I guess when it comes down to it, we need to be worried about these things. And like I said, yeah, the big cities are probably the biggest worry. I don't know.
Well, guess what's going to be coming from this after this is you're going to start seeing people in big cities trying to move rural and get the heck out of Dodge, especially with the climate of all the companies that are out there that were looking at possibly having people work from home, telecommute.
Hey, if I can figure out how to pay the bills, I'd have probably done it already.
Well, but these big companies are that's what they're looking at now. But now that what that's going to bring as well is another problem. And that is going to be that you're going to have all these commercial buildings sitting empty that are not getting paid for, with rent, because people are going to bail and say, hey, guess what? COVID taught us we can have all our staff work from home. So now you're going to have a real estate market collapse again.
Maybe, but there will be some disadvantages of not having a corporate center. We'll have to see how that plays out. There might become less corporate centers, or they might have more satellite employees. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out.
Yeah, I'm just saying, that's something.
But I will say, like in my job, I work a lot where I have to call tech support. Okay, for various products or whatever. And I'll tell you what, during this COVID-19 thing, pretty much every tech support person I've talked to has been working from home because they can do it from home.
Yep.
Well,
my brother-in-law just he just got a job doing tech support for a pool pump and pool heater company right from his home. I mean, people are going to start figuring this stuff out. The businesses are going to start figuring this out. It's less money, especially if they can sell their buildings, or they're making it work. I'm looking at chat. Catherine said the COVID Australia is starting to reopen. They've only had one case in 2 weeks. Yeah, a lot of stuff is going to change. Travis said airplanes, schools, trains, concerts. Yeah, basically our life is different now. And
I think he's asking about what by everything reopening. I just meant so people could get back to work.
Oh, sure.
Not airplanes yet. I don't think a bunch of people should be moving around a whole bunch yet.
No.
But the trains, at least the local ones, the metro trains, are still running here in LA.
Sorry, I'm just looking back at chat.
Linda saying there.
Yeah, Linda's saying Minnesota's hitting now. I know they're not peaking.
Some companies want to be able to see employees at home, track every keystroke on the computer.
Oh, I honestly, I don't doubt it.
And Travis, that's exactly why we won't lose corporate centers, because there will always be micromanagers like that who are going to need to see the people who are doing the work. Anyways, how come we got off onto that? Anyways.
Yeah. Well, honestly, a lot of this stuff, it does tie together when you look at especially government control.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not, Travis. You did get the generator system. No, that's I don't think it's overkill. And especially, I know where Travis is at. I mean, they're in a tornado not ridden area, but they have them pretty frequently. I mean, To me, if I could do one right now, I'd have one in because I deal with really harsh winters and we lose power up here in the wintertime. That's a whole different scenario. That's like uh, prepper type stuff.
I actually know somebody who has a big backup generator, client of ours. Um, that's an interesting system. I'll tell you what.
I used to sell them, and Travis and I talked one night about them because his wife was interested in the system, and I do believe in them. My neighbor has one, and my house. I built a slab on grade home,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be set up for me to add one later, but they didn't do it. So now I got to figure out a different route to do it, like maybe do it up on the road and put a propane tank up there. Um, and there's some reasoning for this. Before COVID hit, or I shouldn't even say before. Yep, Millbilly's talking Generac. Yep, I sold Generacs and I sold GEs that were made by Briggs and Stratton.
Mm-hmm.
Generacs are made up in Wisconsin. They actually own. Generac actually makes the generator ends for companies like Caterpillar for their big generators. But
The little generator my boss takes out to the desert when we go out there to do work is a little Generac.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're the most popular. Popular. But before all this COVID stuff really took off, I was starting to watch, what we need to do to prep. Well, a lot of people think those preppers are crazy, but they're really not. They actually are way ahead of everybody else that didn't do any prepping. And for instance, they've been storing food for however many years now. Well, now we're seeing a shortage of pork and beef, and that's because there's 4 beef plants in the United States that are shut down because of collusion on price gouging. The pork plant in South Dakota was shut down because of 600 COVID cases that they had. And I was watching. I was watching the North Dakota governor today talk about this. And there was a couple of people chatting, and they're like, "Well, watch for famine now." We do have to start paying more attention to this type of stuff.
Yeah. Our leaders aren't making the best decisions for us, and hopefully everybody starts to pay attention to that. Hopefully, Drain the Swamp becomes a reality because it needs to happen. And but it's going to be up to the people to make it happen, and that means everybody in their own little corner of the world. But,
and here's a good point. Those that are against hunting, Millbilly just said it. He's a hunter. He won't go hungry. But if you're in a big city, which I know he is, but I mean he leaves the city for hunting. That is some things that people need to start thinking about is other means to take care of your family, whether that's prepping and buying stuff if you've got the money to do that, or if it's hunting or farming. This is all stuff that's going to change the world.
Yeah, in Wisconsin, that's probably a good option, but a lot of woods and wooded area and place for game, everything. In LA, not so much.
Yeah, how are you going to go out and
outside the city? You're in the middle of desert. And there's just not much there.
How are you going to go out and shoot Del Taco?
Yeah, right.
You can't do it.
Or lizards. Good luck. You get some snakes and lizards, maybe. So there you go.
I'm going hunting for Whataburger.
Rabbit maybe out in the desert. You might get. Sometimes maybe quail if you're lucky in certain areas.
Sure.
So anyway, all right, folks. Well, that's our little discussion about 41 shots. Pretty tragic case. Honestly, the big question I'm left with in the end is why is there no explanation for why these cops were stopping to initiate this contact, which ended up in Amadou Diallo's death. Tragic death. Very tragic, very painful death. But it's sad. But I mean, for me, ultimately, that's the big question that I take away from this one. So anyway, any thoughts, Jamie, before we go?
Well, my big question is, how did the state think that this was going to be okay? Obviously, they did make it play out in their favor, but how did they excuse this? I mean, any attorney would have probably looked at this and said 41 shots. I mean, really? And I know they tried to push that, but there's a way to make that.
His mom won $3 million, I think, in the civil lawsuit against New York City, and she used it to start a foundation that helps like immigrants that come to New York to go to school, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep, she did, but again, it ties back to the legal system. They had to. She had to, or I should say, the family. Was at the mercy of trying to plead their case that 4 officers and 41 shots, and this was legit. I mean, again, they think the common people are too stupid to read through the BS. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. It's I think that's a big problem. Up until now, I think a lot of detectives, agents of the state everywhere always thought, we can get away with it. Nobody's ever going to be able to do anything about it, or nobody's going to ever care enough, or whatever. Well, now that's changed, and now.
And guess what? We've got Netflix to thank for that, and the Avery case.
Right.
That's literally what blew a lot of this wide open.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. So, folks, remember to be looking for us tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about episode 4 with most likely Mr. Capaldi. Probably not Jerome in the morning because he might be up. We'll have to see. He's pretty much same schedule as Paul, so I guess there's maybe a shot he might be up. So we'll see. But anyways, look for us to cover at least one of these episodes tomorrow, possibly 2. And we'll probably do something this weekend regarding Avery Dassey on Sunday. I'll have to get back to you guys about that one just when I think about it a little bit. But I'll probably come up with something. So everybody out there, if you're, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. And we'll see ya.
Have a good night, y'all.